Hi, everybody. I'm really excited because today I have my friend Anne Myslewski here. She is, what are you? Go ahead and tell everybody what you do.
I'm the vice president for opera and classical programming at Untrapped.
Untrapped is an incredible place that does opera and outreach and all sorts of things for young artists and professionals alike. And everybody comes together and they produce amazing shows.
We just did a big symphonic concert with the Richmond Ballet and the Richmond Symphony and a few of our soloists. We did a Carmina Burana 2 nights ago. That was the end. We've got still more concerts. Sting is tonight.
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned Carmina Burana because a lot of pieces that we listen to in video game music, oftentimes it feels like they're borrowing from Carmina Burana. So we might hear some of that today.
That's great by me. I love that piece.
Do you know anything about video game music?
Oh, I'm going to date myself so profoundly. When I was a kid, I was like Pac-Man, Mario Brothers, the first Zelda. Like Zelda was a big deal. Now I play almost exclusively Tetris. Well,
I'm really excited because we're actually going to start with Tetris. So my plan today for everybody that's watching is we're going to start from oldish, middle-ish video game history, and then we'll go on with modern with some stuff like Baldur's Gate 3 and Starfield and stuff. So we're going to start, in fact, with the Tetris theme, which you already know, but we should talk about it because I find it's kind of interesting. That's quite the loop, isn't it?
It is. I mean, if you want to equate it to classical music, like that's Bach right there. That's like a little Bach fugue almost, right? Like the walking bass, like the whole thing.
It really has its like dancing vibe to it that I find so charming, and I wonder where that derives from. I actually don't know. I know that there was that movie Tetris that explains the detailed history of Tetris.
Yeah. Yes.
And I don't fully know, but you know, I find it interesting that it has a sort of like Russian dance feel to it, even though it was made in Japan. I'm pretty sure it's a really interesting thing.
God, I watched the movie a couple weeks ago. I feel like there was the Russian connection to it, but I do love that. Like you can almost see like the guy doing the splits, right? But like kicks in it. Like there's there is that folk music kind of vibe to it for sure.
It's so funny that even though these are beeps and boops, there is a sense of like a cohesive melody that is so hard to find. Yep. Actually, I have a question for you. Are you a singer as well?
I started musically as a pianist, and then I did get 2 degrees in opera performance before deciding that being on stage was not my jam.
In terms of musical structure, like what's most important to you, especially like now, because you also hear like thousands of auditions all the time, every fall.
Melody, I think, is really the most important thing for me, and the execution of the melody. So, the thing with Tetris, like there is a melody there, but it is not nuanced, right? It is one-dimensional. So for me, I like the stuff I'm looking for melodically usually has some variance as far as the way in which it comes across, something that kind of keeps me engaged.
Persona! Oh. Wait, I didn't see you there. Persona 3 Reload is nearly upon us on February 2nd, 2024. On Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, Windows, Steam, PlayStation 5, and PlayStation 4. And I'm literally jumping out of my seat in excitement because I know that this is one game I have to play in my lifetime, both for its gameplay and for its music, especially as a person who's only ever played Persona 5. Persona 3 is easily one of the most lauded and admired entries in the Persona series, and Reload is going to make it even better. Cutting-edge graphics, modern quality of life features, and of course, a stylish UI that we've come to love and expect from the Persona series. Not only all of this exciting stuff for returning players, and most importantly, this is an awesome jumping in spot for folks like me or maybe you who really aren't too familiar with the Persona series and have always been curious to jump in. This is the perfect spot to do it. No prior experience with Persona as a series is required or needed to fall in love with this game. Not only all of this, but the Persona series is known for its deep discussion and exploration on the human psyche, and this game in particular explores themes of mortality, fate, and the balance between life and death and the entire meaning of existence. Yup, I am very on board. Sign me up. Persona 3 Reload has been on my personal hype list since it was announced, and I cannot wait to finally play it, and you can too by pre-ordering now or when it launches on February 2nd, 2024. Speaking of melody, Final Fantasy VI, it's called Terra's theme.
obviously a very different approach than the first one. We've got multiple voices. I'm so glad that the sampling is better than it was back then. I'd love to hear an orchestra actually do this because I think it would be beautiful. Like,
do you want to hear an orchestra do it?
Yeah. Do you have one? Like when the brass came in, I was like, oh, brass. And then I was like, oh, brass. I love that there is repetition that you can kind of hang your hat in. I think that sometimes in orchestral music, like, you just have to wait so long for that theme to come back around. It was one of the things Mark Campbell, who wrote libretto for Volpone, which was the piece that got me into Wolf Trap. That was what I assisted on. I remember him saying that repetition is not the enemy. Like, it is okay to have a repeated motif and have people be able to hang their hats on it, be able to get it into their ears.
That's actually a really interesting point, though, because one of the things that I think video game music intrinsically has to do, if there's too much variance, I think it's really hard to cling on to something and feel some sort of emotion. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, like, these things, like Tara's theme is about a character. So that's her motive. And so in 2 minutes, we have to understand and connect to why that music is the way it is, so that we can then like latch onto that character emotionally. Right. And if you don't have that repetition, you do lose a little bit of it kind of just meanders around and it doesn't lock in. Again, highlights the importance of melody.
This theme is obviously female, right? Mm-hmm. Because of where it sits and because of the orchestration. I'll be so curious to know as we go through, like, whether thinking about that changes or whether that still remains fairly standard in the way that these themes are put across. So I don't have any answers, but I hope we'll that somewhere.
Yeah.
That would be right at home in a 7,000 seat outdoor amphitheater to listen to right next to Beethoven.
It's interesting in a couple different ways. First of all, you have the fact that like these composers were working with the sound sampling that they could work with at the time. Sure. To then take that and then orchestrate it, you hear a lot of the nuance that we obviously miss when we're listening to the 8-bit, 16-bit. I feel like video game music is always dancing around the symphonic element. So then when you get an example like this, where this is from Distant Worlds, which is a touring production of Final Fantasy music, I think it's nice that we do that because it's for fans and we celebrate the music. But I really, like you said, I mean, just like take this and like just drop it in a symphony performance.
When you listen to that melody, I'm going to bring it back to opera for a minute, but like that has that kind of soaring melody that we would look for in like Puccini. Like Puccini is someone who controls our emotions in a very specific way. You could hear, I mean, if you had a singer doing that theme, like there are so many things that they would bring to it, that they could do to it that would really bring an audience member in. It really is very emotional.
It's interesting how we can't escape the humanistic aspect of like the orchestral, the performance experience. And I think it's interesting. I've had people on here as well that if they hear the synth too much, they're like, yeah, it's nice, but the synth, and it's like, well, yeah, I know, but like, you understand, like we as people that are in the industry or have been exposed to the industry need to be able to look past that and understand that the emotional connection that music is deriving is actually more important than whether or not it's synthetic. Or
it's a little bit like the book to movie thing, right? I'm going to go see the movie because this character made me feel this way and I want to see how they're going to tell the story in this new way. That emotional connection is not to be, I mean, you just can't discount that. That's what, like, that connection is what we all want from the things we take in artistically and for leisure. Like, we just, like, sorry, that makes all kinds of sense to me.
So I just finished up this game called Chrono Trigger, which came out around the same time as what I just played for you, Final Fantasy VI. And so, but it's a different composer. That composer was Nobuo Uematsu. This composer is Yasunori Mitsuda. This is another character's theme.
Oh, cool.
This character is called Shala. Do you want to know the backstory
Yeah.
a little bit? In Chrono Trigger, you go back in time and forward in time and you manipulate time. It's a really beautiful concept. And, a lot of people that played this game are my age, in mid early 30s. So for a lot of people, this was their first experience talking about death and talking about time. Shala's forced to control a certain magic to energize this thing that ends up being the main villain. There's an inherent sadness to it.
Well, that makes a lot of sense too, because you've got the rhythmic motive, which kind of gives you that forward motion and a little bit of I don't know, maybe a little anxiety, just because it does, it's very regular and very kind of just turning back and forth like a clock hand, I guess, but also the way that melody surfs so beautifully over top of it. A song that I love for kind of the same reason that's a pop song is Foo Fighters' Everlong, because he just surfs it, but he's got that kind of really driving rhythmic thing that doesn't tend to move at all, but is able to surf these super long phrases, minor modal enough that you can't really tell where you end, where you are as far as positivity, negativity. You're in this kind of liminal
the nebulous
space. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a really interesting point too, because so often, in these games, it's good versus evil and so on and so forth, right? And the tale as old as time, if you will. But it is interesting when music brings into it this quality of sort of ambiguousness when it comes to emotion, which is really fun to play with because it can mean multiple different things.
As someone who doesn't know the story at all, I definitely didn't hear that's not a hero theme, right? That's not definitely, and it's not necessarily someone who needs to be saved. It's not so plaintive. It's not so searching, but it is that kind of liminal, something without that center to kind of anchor it. You don't know which way it might go.
I love it. And also guessing things out of context is so much fun because it's you can't really be wrong per se, Okay, this is a song I don't know. It's Gerudo Valley from The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Oh my God, I love it. I need a rose between my teeth.
Yeah. Hasn't looped yet.
No. Huh. And that little blues note right there, that was nice.
Yeah. There's a loop. He's up there.
That's flamenco.
Yeah.
That's so great. Although that's not a game I ever played, but I love that it's called the Ocarina of Time. Way to work the musical instrument into the title. But boy, that's fun, right? Not playing the game, but having all kinds of pictures come up in my head about what that music could be accompanying, both from a journey to even just a dance scene from a movie almost, that's great.
I sort of feel there's some sort of running around or being chased playfully. Yeah. But it's interesting how we didn't loop until 2 minutes in, whereas the other tracks, because of the limitations, were already looping. And that's it's interesting that it's becoming a sort of fully fledged musical idea.
Right.
With layers of polyphony and harmony and all sorts of things.
That development, that exposition is a normal compositional thing, right? That's a classical music trope that we have the melody and then we develop it and then we turn back around and maybe develop or restate it.
Zelda came out February 21st, 1986, and then Ocarina of Time, November 1998.
Wow.
Time span.
Yeah.
It's been years, and there's an evolution of that sort of style of music.
It's one of the things we love about classical composers is looking at their early work and seeing kind of what those initial ideas and the way that they express them, and then looking at the later work and seeing what parallels you can draw back to the way they learned how to do it and how they've grown and what influences they've taken in. This is so fun.
Are you having a good time?
Yeah.
Something like the Mortal Kombat 3 theme song, it ties back to the idea that music can enhance pretty much anything. And in the case of Mortal Kombat, literally combat to death, right? A deathly battle.
Yeah.
And so Mortal Kombat 3 has just such an amazing song. And I think we should just vibe out to it for a little bit and I don't know, talk about how it makes us feel.
point in my life. I love it. I love it.
We can stop there.
Do we have to? Sweet. Oh my God. How do you sit still with that?
You can't. It's impossible.
There's no way. And I mean, and even the meat slap kind of moments in it, right? At the percussion at the beginning does not sound like a drum. Like it sounds like a boom, boom. Yeah, it's hard. I'm a little amped up, man. That's good.
There's a really cool mobile game that I like called Punishing Gray Raven that it sort of borrows from sort of that like techno aspect of Mortal Kombat's theme song, let's say. We'll jump ahead here a little bit just so you can hear it. But I'm not really into EDM, but I discovered EDM through this game. Yeah, I think Hikari, this is a good one.
That's cool. That has everything in it when you think about it. Like the fact that that composer has worked in like a great beat, kind of classical, like orchestral instruments, has that choir, has a pop vocalist, like, and it all really works together. Like that dropout when you get the pop vocalist at the end with it's really beautiful.
And it tells a story. It tells a story of a person who is sacrificing themselves, working hard, deciding to stand up and saying, no, I'm going to, vanquish my enemies, fight my foes, whatever. There's a real galvanization. It's great stuff to listen to at the gym.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, I feel like Marvel has stolen quite a bit from this. Like when you look at like the soundtracking for like the big kind of blockbuster movies, there's a lot of transference for sure.
But it's interesting how video game music is sort of sequestered in its little hidey holes, and there's all these different subcategories of niches and things. And
why do you think it is sequestered? Is it because there are so many subgenres that people don't know how to kind of talk about it?
I think there's still a giant stigma around video game music and video games in general. I think that it's hilarious because video games bring in more money than the film industry. I don't know why that is. Honestly, it's a thing that I try to buck against, because it's like, this is really well deserved. Not just this piece, but all these pieces that I'm sharing with you, like, deserve a seat at the table. And the fact that they kind of don't really have one, it's unclear why that is. Going back to Orchestra Land, this is from a game, The Elder Scrolls, which is a very timeless series, and this is the main theme from The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind.
One of my first concerts was a Lord of the Rings live with orchestral music, and that first battle scene and like the vista scene. I remember just having goosebumps because I knew, to your point about like knowing the story and knowing the characters, like when that happened, just like goosebumps the whole time, because I knew what was going to happen. You can feel the travelers, you can see the goal in the distance, that how hard it's going to be to reach it, and I mean, I don't know the game, but like there's something about the hero's quest in this music for sure.
For sure. Bethesda makes games that are really about that exploration, and you never know what's across the next mountain or the next cave. It's dense, and it gives player autonomy, which is often hard to find. And musically, you hear that, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, like,
that was a takeaway.
It definitely feels like you've got the vista, you don't have the direction, right?
That open quality really feels like sort of like, I don't know, your mind creates a whole bunch of different images, like walking into a doorway or entering into a space. Like, it's a very welcoming sound, I think, having those open forests and fists, because it does feel like a sort of embrace of openness, you know? Next up is a Super Smash Brothers Brawl main theme. Latin.
Love it. That's your turn. That's your part right there, Margo.
I know.
A little hymn moment.
Yeah. The words mean something too. That's the same composer as Terra's theme that we heard earlier on.
Oh, it is a very different.
Self-taught, mind you.
Oh, good for him. That's great. First of all, there's a lot going on, which is great. If you had told me that was what I was going to hear for Super Smash Brothers, like a game with that name, I would have been like, yeah, whatever. It's going to be like the EDM one, right? Like super incongruous with the name and like what just came through my headphones. Super, which is great, right? The fact that it is all underpinned by like a really like legit chorus, like classical, like, I mean, like that's some real singing from the soloist, from that, like that choral group was bonkers. They were great. And to have something like with that kind of epic, slightly military approach, like you've got God and country in that theme, right?
Yeah. The lyrics are all about like, I fight my enemy fights alongside me. I made a video about this not too long ago, and it's funny because a lot of people are like, this song was the day I realized I love classical music.
The gateway.
But see, but that's people going to where people are,
right?
In the ultimate way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you get introduced to that sound in a way that is connected to something you love to do.
Well, it's interesting though, because actually Nobuo Uematsu's music is what got me into classical music. Because I used to listen to it, the piano renditions of it on repeat. I had a piano album that was just covers, and I usually used to listen to it all the time. So the next piece, it's Celtic, and it's from an awesome game, Metal Gear Solid, which is one of my favorite games of all time. That song is one of the key songs of my childhood, so I could listen to that on repeat. Yeah, it's so
beautiful. Nice. I'm glad you gave me the Celtic reference because at the beginning it sounded almost like a Renaissance motet, like the way that the choral part is put together at the very beginning. I went to a very different spot. I wouldn't have had that context. The soloist sounds like Judy Collins' early stuff.
It is an interesting thing to think about how the vocals can create a sense of nakedness and a sense of like raw vulnerability and like emotional depth. Vocals are really the thing, that human connection, because that wasn't like a perfect vocalism. It had imperfections in it and stuff, and yet that's the thing that sort of that soprano especially guides us in such an interesting way.
We've heard a lot of female solo lines like that. Are there games where the theme is like a guy, like a tenor or a baritone kind of vocalizing, or is that more a trope for? Okay, good.
Females tend to be the voice of God, very similarly to opera, celestial voice, the voice of like purity, innocence. Typically, men are saved for villains or for manly power. Yeah, it's a little bit too stereotypy, unfortunately. But I think it also has to do with layering, because if you're structuring out a phrase, instruments sound too much in the same range as the male. It's difficult to like pull it up. But that said, I mean, I might as well play you this. It's like a made-up language.
Love it. But a little bit of like Slavic, Russian L kind of thing. Yeah.
That's some Trovatore.
Right? I would 100% watch that opera. Although here's the thing too, like having been in this, like the mix is like, I wanted more of him in the mix.
Yeah, no, there wasn't. Yeah,
like, I was like, I mean, the orchestra is great, but like, I can't hear him. That's why I was like because I wanted to hear a little bit more. There are volume things I could have used, but I'm old. Yeah. It's hard.
no, but the mixing is really poor.
Yeah, I really wanted to hear kind of more of what he was doing. Those lines are great.
It's all B flats. I've tried. I'm like, I want to cover it because I know I can, but it's like also very hard. And so every time I go to do it, I'm like, oh yeah.
I'm so tired.
But there's a virility there. And that's an example of like a strong male presence. You don't get a lot of male soloists, but that's definitely one.
That's very cool. And it is super powerful and very kind of like energizing and very masculine, right? Like that is like the archetype right there.
This is called Grandma. You would think it's a positive. It's not. It's from a game called Near Automata. It's a beautiful song.
First of all, the vocal line is beautiful. There's a little bit of, you can hear the French R, like the French spoken casual R and things that I keep thinking I understand.
You're like, what does it mean? Yeah.
For me, the beginning of it, just the arpeggiated piano after a while got a little, like I wanted something more to happen. I was happy when the orchestral stuff kind of came in because it is really beautiful. And the shadow harmony is really nice too. Like that's really beautiful too.
It's interesting that you say that because there is a shadow element in this game. Like there's a darkness that accompanies this particular character. It very much is that strophic Schubert thing that we know. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Very, like, oh, it's the same song, just a little bit different. I actually love the drums when they come in that second section.
I do too. To your point about kind of tonality, like the fact that this is minor, but it is also a little modal, and the fact that we do get that kind of wistfulness and that hoping from kind of a place that doesn't feel super optimistic. I mean, that's something that I think comes through quite clearly in this. So given the context that you gave about this character and their path, that makes a lot of sense.
This is called Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower. It is just, let's just say it's a very difficult fight in a very difficult game.
That brass is great.
Yeah. I mean, it's nonstop.
That's like this awesome cross between the Bedlam theme from Rake's Progress and Sweeney Todd and the Mozart Requiem. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you get a little bit of everything. That's sweet. I'd be sad that she killed me, but if that played after I was dead, I'd be okay.
Some of these tracks are some of the best tracks in video games that have ever been written. And I think that, a piece like this, if you did program it in conjunction with something, would absolutely fit, and it would be intense, and it would be difficult for the chorus, and it would be satisfying for a listener to feel on the edge of their seat, and to feel that tension, which I think people don't understand, that classical music can cause a lot of tension, and it can cause us to feel uncomfortable and be afraid and so on and so forth. Cool. Next up is something that came out this year. It's called Adrift, and it's from actually a video game, but it's a musical. Austin Orry composed it, and there's literally like you pick an option, and then the vocal line will shift, and it will go in a different. I forget how many tracks Austin recorded, but basically there's 4 albums, because each of the things, like depending on what dialogue you pick, the lyrics will shift and the interaction will change.
Wow.
Vocal.
Is the world too much, or is it just me? Everything I set upon unravels at my feet. Everything I've learned wasted on a girl who doesn't know how to be free. With the fire furious, I have burned my tongue. Grief from all the promises, too many dreams unsung. All the steps I didn't take and paths proved untrue. Is there any path through? Like a boat lost at sea, with no sails, not a breeze, I am drifting cold waters, no star to be seen.
I hadn't listened to that in its entirety. What do you think of that?
It feels like a music theater piece, right? Like it feels like a conversation, like two subsequent conversations happening that aren't related at all. One who's aware and one who's not. There's something that I want that it doesn't quite have, and I can't. I'm trying to put my finger on what that is, but it's it's lovely. It just, I think that there's just something missing.
I'm really curious to see like the actual, like the full on thing, because that's one example. And so the thing is if everything is optional and choice,
how do all the melodies work together, right?
Yeah, right. And I think that's really the curiosity to me. Also coming from the world of opera and coming from the world of singing and like being trained classically, I wonder what it would sound like in a different sort of soundscape with different artists performing. Yeah. But I wonder if that's not like a prejudice that I have that is inaccurate.
As you talked through that first, I think the thing that is missing for me in that excerpt is probably related to the structure of the show, right? Because if all these things have to dovetail, they're going to be limited to a certain sonic palette and a certain choice of keys that they have to go through. And I think maybe that's what I'm responding to in the saying that it's missing something, because the harmony is fairly static and programmed, whereas the stuff we've heard prior has been really kind of wide ranging. So it felt very kind of pared down.
More than anything, I think it's actually an amazing thing that this undertaking, a role-playing musical, exists, because that's not.
Yeah. First of all, like I would think that the storyboarding, if that's something that happens with computer games, that it would be really intense to do a player game anyway. And then you're doing it with those additional musical, tonal, harmonic restrictions on it. That's I mean, like, I can't wait to see it now. I don't play games, but maybe I'd play a game that you don't have to shoot, because I'm not very fast.
You just have to push a button.
I could push a button.
This is from a game called Lost Ark. This is a live performance, actually. This soprano is ungodly good. This is called Nostalgia of Phantasm. Phantasm.
The creativity that goes into the concepts and even just the names, I'm like, that sounds like it's evocative. It's so cool.
It's very magic flute.
Yeah. She'd be a bitchin' queen of the night. Great. That soloist is bonkers. That's
so graceful,
beautiful.
too.
So glad she had a mic, because that orchestra.
There's no way.
Like we got to a little past the middle, and then all of a sudden it got bigger, and I was like, how the frick does it get bigger and louder here? Like, didn't you I thought they laid it on the floor of the first part, and they were just like.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
I did have one question though when I was listening to it, because you were talking about the reasons why some stuff isn't programmed in the concert hall, and there are a lot of Verdi-ish things in this. If I were putting it out at a concert, I would want to be careful about what I paired it with, because I would want both of them to be seen as
same.
Right, have that same kind of thing. But boy, that's gorgeous. And that conductor is having more fun than any human being. Like, you could tell he's just like, yeah, like, and I don't blame him one bit.
So speaking of Latin, pretty much I never do one of these without including something relating to Latin, and one of my favorite video games ever, which is Ace Combat 7.
Does sound like a call to action, kind of like you can hear the like yeah, like getting ready for something. The only Latin I've sung has been like church Latin, ecclesiastical Latin, and some of the like stresses I was like, wait, where's the syllable going? Like I couldn't figure it out, and I was really glad to have the text, because like the Latin is actually great. It's a really beautiful kind of way to take those sentiments and both elevate them and also tie them back into time in a way that like makes you
exactly
like, it's like making you a lineage of like.
That's what's so amazing about it. You know what this game is about? It's about fighter planes. Shooting planes. I love every single track because it literally combines like Steely Dan, like ZZ Top, yeah. Like there's like some like legit, and then there's a random like Latin chorus in it, and the meme is you're in trouble when the sky starts speaking Latin, because because there's a reverence here, and what's really cool about it is that it's essentially like the planes themselves are like gods, and these metallic beings of it's just fighter planes, but the way that the drama is built up, it's very operatic, for me as a person who comes from this classical world, like it's so satisfying.
It's a harmony that is like fairly open, like you were saying before. Mm-hmm. Like it is a fairly open harmony. It's like super like bass treble, like man kind of heavy, with that kind of driving rhythm. Like it's hard to not get kind of like amped up about it, right?
This is a little bit jazzy, called Last Surprise from Persona 5.
End credits, Magnum PI. I love it.
Pretty much, yeah.
I love it though, man.
Sure we got the clue. How bad? Here we go. Don't you know? No more art. And as you look at the horizon, not a cloud, but then stormy weather's go too cold. Seems like it crept up out of nowhere, all around you is not what you foretold. You never see it coming.
Oh my God.
My mind is to pass for eyes. You're done, but the time is hit you. You're not surprised.
Yeah, that's fun. It's like a little bit of like Shaka, a little bit of like theme song at the beginning. I think it's the beginning that really like got me with like the TV like theme song. But like you get this like little like 70s groove, 70s late 80s groove, a little bit of funk, like. That's fun.
And it's an anime game, it's a game like...
What? That's definitely not a texture we've talked about yet today. That's great that like it really is the whole gamut.
Great segue. Are you into heavy metal?
I was at one point. I haven't listened to it for a long time.
This is called Tenebre Rosso Sangue, and I play it for literally everybody who is open-minded enough that I think that they'll appreciate it. This is going to go very hard, so just be prepared.
Sweet. love a pipe organ, man. That's great. That's awesome, man. That's my hair's not long enough to like whip it around anymore. It's mosh, but like that was great.
You never know who's gonna vibe with that song. I love that you vibe with it. It's just the most unsuspecting people vibe to that.
Right? I don't know. Like I love the juxtaposition of like that like incredibly crazy drum hard underpinning with all of that like organ filigree, and the fact that it's like pipe organ instead of like something else like also makes it like super strong. It's like an archaic way of saying it's going to hurt way more. You're just like, oh, I am in real trouble now because like not only
up,
right.
So
I have like 3 people I'm going to send that to, and we're done. I'm
really?
going to need all of these links because like I have a couple of friends who are like also like in the music industry and like the opera stuff that I'm going to be like, do you know this? Because you need to listen to it.
Baldur's Gate 3 is think Dungeons and Dragons, quite literally Dungeons and Dragons. You can do anything you want as long as the dice allow it, and awesome. It is great. This is Raphael's theme, which I believe you meet him along your journey. He is the devil.
Lives, oh mortal lives, expire. Souls go to their dooms in flame forevermore.
Hell has its laws. Hell. Effect in the cause, curtain falls.
I didn't expect that.
For now,
I say that all the time, dude. I do love a diabolical voiceover. That's good.
Lives, oh mortal lives, expire.
I love it.
It's giving me Disney vibes.
Right, for real, like listening to a bunch of these back to back though, the one thing that I'm finding that I really love is that the vocalism in these tracks is so honest. Like there's not like it's all connected to the support. It's got some vibrato in it, regardless of like whether it's a classical presentation or like something that's like more mixy, more empty, more pop. Like I don't know. I really love the fact that that presence and that strength and that clarity is part of this, like these different worlds. Like it's really great.
You are one of my favorite types of people because you don't know anything. I mean, besides you're nice and my friend, but beyond that,
like nothing about this world at all.
You don't know anything about this. And, you know, you're around opera pretty much constantly. So, you know, I sort of wanted to know what your takeaway has been after listening. And you can give me your completely honest opinion, of course. But like, you know, what have you come away with?
It's so interesting. Like when I think about the way that I'm hearing the writing for a lot of these storytellings, and when I think about some of the stuff that I'm hearing in the operatic canon, I wish there was a little bit of cross-pollination, right? Because there is momentum and viscerality that the video game music has that sometimes we don't get in the new operatic stuff that is being written these days. It tends to and I'm not a composer. I like no aspersions on anyone because God knows I couldn't do it if I tried, but I do feel like there's lessons maybe that or takeaways for impetus and momentum and driving excitement, because I think that's something that this genre is super good at, right? Like it's definitely driving you towards different emotions, different states of mind. It would be easy for me to say, oh, you like this? Here are 3 things I think you might like from the classical or the operatic canon. Like there's really such a tie-in between them. I'm amazed at the breadth. Not that I shouldn't, like I should have maybe expected it, but having no traction with it aside from like Tetris and like the old stuff, really like knowing kind of how symphonic and how, like, I'm also fascinated to be like, how do they put that together with the playing and how, like, how does it work? I'm super interested in that now, which is not something I've thought about before our conversation at all.
I'm glad that I could expose you to a whole new sound world that isn't just beeps and boops, and I think deserves a lot more respect. Ryan McKinney said this, that they're not encumbered by the status quo of like societal expectations. Yeah. There's no rules. If you feel like composing something, you can. Before I let you go, I just want to let you listen to one more piece that I recently discovered that I adore. This is a prime example. Like this, you could hear this on the radio, but you won't because it's almost too unique. This is They Might As Well Be Dead from Risk of Rain 2, Survivors of the Void.
Would be something I'd love to see live. It was like fun to have that very different tonal world. When the synth came in with that, like with the panning back and forth, that's a great example of how electronic can be woven into these fabrics and done so like in a really beautiful way.
Well, listen, Leanne, thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you and I have been playing we were both like sleep deprived one another, and I'm just super grateful that I got to share this with you and you got to experience it. And I know that you're such an advocate for the arts, and that I actually feel like you may actually start advocating for video game music now.
Yeah, I mean, this has been super educational. I'm so delighted, first of all, that we finally got together because it's lovely to see you and to reconnect, but also like that's like a jaded old lady. Like, I feel like there's a lot of things that I've heard, and I got to hear a lot of stuff today that was completely new to me. So I'm really grateful for that. And I do love all of the correlations and how you make it so easy to make the connections between the classical music world and a lot of the stuff that we listen to. So thank you for that. It was so fun.
Of course, yes. And thanks as always, everybody. Feel free to subscribe, and we'll see you later. Bye, everybody.